Hello, my name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter, and this is the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. I've been your host and beat reporter for Jacksonville Jaguars on SI every single day since August 2019, and we are now continuing to move forward through yet another offseason together. All right, folks, welcome to today's episode. Today, I want to talk about why I think the Jaguars entering this offseason will not face the same fate as the Jaguars of 2018 or the Jaguars of 2023. Because the Jaguars have had seasons similar to last season in recent times. Not seasons as impressive. They never went 13-4, obviously. But seasons in which they won the AFC South and went 10-6 in 2017, win the AFC South, go all the way to the AFC Championship game. They go 9-8 and win the AFC South in 2022, win in the wild card round, go to the divisional round. So 2 different years, varying degrees of success, both in the regular season and postseason compared to this past season. But at the end of the day, what connects those 2 teams, 2017 and 2022, is they were one-hit wonders. They didn't build upon their success. In 2023, they went 9-8 again, the very same record. So not exactly, if you're looking purely at record, are you saying they take a step back? But 1, they were expected to take a leap. And then 2, they started 8-3. And they had the chance at one point to be in the running for the number 1 seed in the AFC. And they go 1-5 in the final month and a half of the season, miss the playoffs, and just absolutely brutal excuse for a season. 2018, they're just downright bad. 2018, they start off hot. I think they started off 3-1. I know they beat New England and Tom Brady at home in Jacksonville. It felt like, okay, they got some revenge for an AFC Championship game that a lot of people thought they got robbed in because of the Miles Jack play. Felt like they had kind of exercised that demon. Okay, here they go. Now they're about to take off. It never happened. And they clearly made some mistakes along the way in both cases. And that led them to being one-hit wonders. So the question now is what the Jaguars can do in 2026. Whether it's during the offseason, whether it's during the draft process, offseason program on the practice field, training camp, whatever they need to do to avoid being another one-hit wonder. Because no matter how positive you feel after that Jaguar season, and you should feel incredibly positive, I don't think anybody's completely comfortable and has it in their mind that this team will do it again quite yet, because they need to see it, because they've been fooled before. But I think that past hurt, that past experiences, doesn't exactly pertain to what's going on with this specific Jaguars team. For one, the quarterback situation, it's just different. I mean, 2018, Blake Bortles was the quarterback, ended up, I think, getting benched at some point in that season. I mean, Blake was he at his best, a great guy, teammate, whatnot, but a very flawed quarterback. He was still a flawed quarterback during the 2017 season, but the Jaguars let a dominant defense that led the way to a lot of wins and recency bias after watching him against the Pittsburgh Steelers to influence their decision-making at the quarterback position. And it led to them extending Blake Bortles, and then they made other moves. They had Dante Moncrief, and they had Andrew Norwell, and they had Taven Bryan instead of, Lamar Jackson. Very few of the moves they made then panned out and aged well. And you can trace a lot of it back to, it started with them extending Blake Bortles after that season when he was merely a passenger on that playoff run. He was a spectator. He played lights out against Pittsburgh in the divisional round. We'll never take that away from him, but the playoffs is a time for narratives to be built and for myths to be made, and the myth of Blake Bortles hurt the Jaguars immensely in 2018. Completely different situation with Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence wasn't just along the ride for the Jaguars going 13-4, like Blake Bortles was in 2017. You can maybe argue he was when they went 5-3 to an extent, but I mean, he goes out and wins that Kansas City Chiefs game. He makes the winning plays in the Las Vegas Raiders overtime win. He had quite a lot to do with them starting 5-3, but then the second half of the season, he was lights out. He was the thing pushing the Jaguars week in and week out. He was the engine of the offense, the heart of the team. And his play over the last 2 months of the season is why the Jaguars finished the year on an 8-game winning streak, why they went 13-4, why he legitimately played at an MVP candidate level and became an MVP finalist in the process. First Jaguars player to ever earn MVP votes. He had already done that in 2022. This time he was a top 5 vote getter. First time a Jaguars player's ever done. Best season, arguably, of an individual has ever had in Jaguars franchise history. So I don't think you compare that to Bortles. And there's a reason to think that Lawrence can be even better next year because he started this past year off relatively slow. I mean, at the midway point, his numbers across the board just were not very good. And he completely took off in the second half of the season. And there's reason to believe like this can be his new norm. Now, Liam Cohen unlocked whatever it was in him that needed to be unlocked. And that Liam Cohen kind of found the path and found the way for Trevor Lawrence to become this player. Blake Bortles in his wildest dreams never could have been the kind of player for the Jaguars that Trevor Lawrence is right now. And then you look back to the 2023 season. The fatal mistake they made that season didn't have anything to do with quarterback, but it had to do with the rest of the team. They changed very little. They obviously added Calvin Ridley, but otherwise, they returned pretty much everybody on both sides of the ball. You know, other than Jawan Taylor and Arden Key. I mean, they just placed Jawan Taylor with Anton Harrison, and they never replaced Arden Key. So their mantra really that offseason kind of seemed to be, we figured this out. We don't need to change a lot. We can run it back the exact same way, and simply because it was a success in 2022, it'll be even better next year. And that didn't pan out. It wasn't the case. They clearly were a team that went 9-8 and then needed, to be built upon to take another leap, as opposed to a team that had arrived and didn't need to be, I'd say, improved upon. So for the Jaguars, I think this offseason, they've already changed the coaching staff up some. They added 2 pretty big additions on both sides. Obviously, they're retaining the coordinators, but I mean, this roster is going to look a good bit different, defensively especially. So I think the Jaguars are going to approach this offseason. Plus, they have 11 picks. Who knows what they can do with those picks in terms of, on the trade market. But I ultimately believe that the Jaguars are going to enter the offseason with just a completely different standard and set of expectations than they did in 2023. So the Jaguars' mindset and the quarterback situation are both completely different this time around. I think that those are 2 very important things. And I think these are 2 things that can propel the Jaguars forward and can give the Jaguars the opportunity to actually build upon this past season, as opposed to a season like 2023 or a season like 2018, where it looked like they had so many chances, so many opportunities to build upon a foundation that they are able to take that next step and not just look at their past step, as finally arriving. I don't think that they are at that point. And I don't think this regime, the way they think, are ever going to be at that point. So thank you for listening to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. Be back next time.